Yes, well, hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar hosted by Salto. My name is Eric Grubaugh, and I'm here today with Sonny Spencer. So, Sonny, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure to be here, Eric.
Salto has kindly invited us here to discuss the landscape of the NetSuite technical role and how we anticipate those roles changing, evolving in the coming year. We have a lot of new folks here today. This is Salto's most popular webinar so far, so they're probably new to one or both of us. So, Sonny, I thought we'd start with some quick introductions. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. For everyone that I don't know, welcome. Um, my background is a chartered accountant, originally from the UK, where I trained there. I transitioned to the US, 11, 12 years ago now, and have lived in the NetSuite world ever since. So from kind of small private equity companies implementing NetSuite all the way through to big publicly traded companies that have been leveraging NetSuite for a very long time. So I've been in that NetSuite ecosystem, seen a lot of change, over the course of 10, 11 years, and have had the fortune of speaking at SuiteWorld on multiple occasions as well. So I feel very much connected and ingrained in the NetSuite ecosystem here. So pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to listen to your expertise today. Um, I am Eric Grubaugh. I'm coming to you guys more from the technical side. So I've been a professional developer for 20 years now. 12 of that has been in the NetSuite space. Currently, I run a professional community where either experienced or aspiring NetSuite developers can grow their skills and their network at the same time. And I also consult with SuiteScript development teams where I help them run more effective, more efficient, and more enjoyable operations. I do also want to give a brief introduction of Salto, since they are graciously sponsoring and hosting this conversation. So, Salto is not a consulting company looking to sell anyone any services, but they are a software company that has built a powerful DevOps platform for your business application teams to plan, review, deploy, and monitor changes to those business platforms. So it supports platforms like NetSuite, Salesforce, Zendesk, Jira, and a whole host of others. You can check out the Salto DevOps platform for yourself with a free 30-day trial by heading over to salto.io. And just some little bit of housekeeping before we finally jump into the conversation. We scheduled a full hour for this, but hopefully plenty of that will be reserved for your questions, you there out in the audience. The Q&A tab and the chat are both open, so I'll be keeping an eye on those throughout our conversation. And if you have a question for Sonny or myself, go ahead and drop that in the Q&A tab. And then lastly, this session is being recorded, so shortly after we wrap up, you'll get an email. It will be sent to with a link, and that will be sent to anybody who registered. And it will also, I believe, be posted to Salto's YouTube channel as well. I think that's it. Sonny, shall we get into it?
Let's do it.
Right. Why do you think this is the most popular webinar? Why did we get so many registrations and attendees?
Yeah, I think NetSuite announced recently they have something like 40,000 plus customers now. I think the NetSuite ecosystem is growing. I think there's a big buzz right now around artificial intelligence, generative AI, all the different veins there, and where folks can leverage that, whether that's to give them a career boost, make them more efficient in their day-to-day, specifically in working with the NetSuite application. Maybe it's giving folks that are more functional minded today on the administrative side kind of a leg up on next steps into the kind of more technical sides of NetSuite. So I imagine that's piqued some folks' interest here today.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll get into this a little bit about how we see these sort of skill sets changing, but I think diversifying your skill set, whether you are a consultant or an admin or a developer or however you sort of interact with NetSuite, I think diversifying your skill set is probably top of mind for a lot of people, but also really important, really critical. It always has been, but maybe even more so now. Um, so what do you see happening with skill sets in the market? What sort of roles do you interact with most, and how do you see those skill sets sort of changing?
Yeah, I think for me, going back to my days at Avalara, there was more of a clear delineation between folks that would be more on the administrative side of managing NetSuite, supporting end users, and a separate development team. And I think what I've seen over recent years is a transition towards, you'll see a lot more roles out there looking for techno-functional skills. In other words, someone that doesn't need to be a chartered accountant and understand the debits and credits, but they do need to understand business processes in order to be able to build effective and efficient scripts to solve business problems. And that is, in my mind, a very well kind of sought after skill set that businesses are looking for today. Because again, with 40,000 plus customers on NetSuite, many of them
Yeah,
have been on the platform for a very long time. You've been in the ecosystem, you said about 12 years. I'm just behind you there. And I think as these companies evolve and their business requirements change, they're looking for folks that not only understand their business processes, but understand where the business is going, so that as they're developing these solutions, technical or not, that they're going to scale with the business and be adaptable as the business changes. So I think that's something that's really well sought after, definitely in 2025 and beyond, I expect.
yeah. I see very similar trends. Like I said, I mostly work with like coming from the development side, but more and more the people joining my mailing list or my community or just asking questions are not developers looking to increase their development skills. They are admins or they are accountants
Yep.
who are getting sort of tossed into customization projects and need to start learning SweetScript, or they're either getting thrown into it or they've decided that
Yep.
they want to do it. But more and more, I see many more non-developers trying to get into development. It's always been the case in the NetSuite space, but it seems more prevalent now. I would say that most of the community members I've added in the last, I don't know, 3 to 6 months, I think almost all of them have been administrators or some other, coming from the marketing office or something like that. I
Wow.
don't think any of them have been developers. So I think we are seeing this sort of combining of the roles, especially at the smaller sort of echelons, the small to mid-size company.
Yep.
Maybe at the SOX, the big publicly traded company, the SOX echelon, we still have those separate teams, those separations of concerns, and probably will for some time. But
Absolutely.
with the smaller companies, the smaller end users who maybe don't have the resources, I think you'll see those roles combine. Um, and I see that in job postings too. When I look at technical roles, I see more and more, especially in admin roles, more and more SweetScript is listed as either a requirement, you either already need to know it, or you can expect to do it as part of the job. So you're either going to need to already know it or pick it up. And so I see that a lot more commonly now, is that being required for administrators. So that hints to me that I think it's pretty broad that companies everywhere are trying to do more with less. Uh, AI is helping them do that and will continue to do so. And so I think that's being borne out in this market as well, especially on, I think, the admin side, especially.
Yeah, I completely agree, Eric. It's consistent with what I'm seeing as well. And even taking that one step further, I've seen job postings out there that won't necessarily say that you need to have 3 to 5 years Suite Script experience, but they will specifically call out a working knowledge of Suite Script or an understanding of Suite Script. In other words, having the ability to sit down with a developer and walk through the code and understand what they're talking about. And for me, it comes back to kind of that scalability. It's one skill to be able to partner with a developer, give them requirements. Okay, this is the solution that we need. But it's another to sit down with them, understand their thought process, and understand, is this scalable? As our business adapts, it changes. Businesses are moving very quickly today because they need to adapt. Is this going to scale, or is this going to break, 3 months, 6 months down the road as the business evolves? So I think that skill set is what I'm seeing out there. And I see folks leveraging Gen AI as kind of they're leveraging it to enhance their own skill sets. And speaking from example, I've used it in the past, like ChatGPT, to generate some base code for advanced PDF templates. Now, I'm not a developer. I don't know HTML, Suite Script. I know enough to be dangerous and enough to know that maybe it's not the cleanest code or accurate code, but it can get the job done. And I think the more that folks start to lean on areas like that with caution, without doubt, they're just going to continue to prove their value to their organization, that they can stretch and that they can play a leading role in kind of AI adoption in the organization.
Yeah, I think that good enough solution is going to be more and more prevalent. That's sort of generative AI is it's a commoditizing pressure on the software development industry. And that's basically what happens in a commoditized market, whether it's software or whether it's, I don't know, soybeans. The both the lowest and the highest sort of quality, however you want to define quality, gets sort of compressed to the edges, and the middle, the average, expands rapidly. So more people are able to create average or good enough quality stuff, and so there's less demand for that higher quality work. But there's also the switching cost is so low, it's so easy to switch to another version of the same commodity that it's hard to stick around as a low quality provider as well. You don't have a lot of staying power. And so I think you're going to see more and more people trying to get into like having it makes say software development, writing code, more accessible to more people. But that also, yeah, you're just going to get that good enough solution a lot, and that's going to be good enough by definition most of the time. So I think you'll see, lower demand if that continues apace. You'll see like lower demand for that the premium quality service. Not no demand, but less. And yeah, you'll just see that middle expand as it becomes more accessible to more people.
I think so too. And Eric, I want to talk about kind of the flip side of that, which is where for folks like myself who are more on the functional side, knowing that there are other applications out there, add-on, that the NetSuite partner community is rich. And I feel very fortunate to, have gone to SuiteWorld in the past, connected with partners, understand their solutions. I've written articles in the past about how you can use custom records in NetSuite to solve business problems, but that sometimes trying to solve the problem yourself isn't the right answer. Maybe there's someone out there in the NetSuite ecosystem that has already solved that problem, and they've solved it for many different businesses across the ecosystem. So are there those kind of low, no-code solutions, point and click, for folks that are more functional, where it's going to make more sense to lean on those? So I think for me, it's everything that you said, but also weighing up the pros and cons of that kind of build versus buy decision-making process as well. That's going to be critical in 2025.
Yeah, we have tons of questions and comments flowing in. I'm going to try to pull some out here.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody, for dropping in and joining the conversation here. Let's see. I'm going to pull out, in no particular order, I'm going to pull out George's comment question here. With AI at the very front of the technology space, what's your take on AI beginning to replace automation tasks or maybe all suite script responsibilities in the future? I might extend that to like workflows, bundles, that sort of thing too on the administrative side. So what's our take on that? And how can admins or developers make sure they continue to stay in demand? Do you want to take that one first? Drop
I
that in your lap.
can. I mean, this is more your wheelhouse, but I'll give my 2 cents here, Eric.
Sure,
So
please do. Yeah,
for me, I don't see AI taking over the world anytime soon. I think one thing that I recommend to anyone that's looking to leverage, you know, large language models, these LLMs, you need to clean up shop first. Do you have the right kind of business processes in place to generate good, clean, reliable data that these models are then going to use and learn? Otherwise, you end up in kind of a garbage in, garbage out
yeah,
place. So it's that human element absolutely is not going away anytime soon. And I think a big part of that to be able to leverage all of the great kind of AI capabilities out there is taking the time to clean up shop first and have kind of robust data governance processes in place to manage your data to enable you to really take advantage of AI and where it's going in the future. That's my 2 cents, Eric.
yeah. I think for me, especially the how do you stay in demand, how do you stay relevant? I think skill diversification, knowledge diversification that's always been the answer. I have always said that if you're a developer, you still have to know the admin side. You still have to know the functional side. You have to be able, if you can't have a conversation with your users in their language, it's going to be really hard to build something useful for them. And so the more you can diversify your knowledge, that doesn't mean you have to become an admin or become a functional consultant or an accountant or anything like that, but the more you can sort of narrow your specialty perhaps and then expand your knowledge of that specialty, so whether that's accounting, manufacturing, pick any, e-commerce, pick any sort of specialization, the more narrowly you can focus, and the more of a demonstrated expert you can become in that specialty, the more in demand you will be, especially if that skill set is cross-functional, so that you can talk to developers, you can talk to admins, you can talk to the accountants, whoever it might be, and collaborate more effectively. And you can validate their AI solutions, or you can build your own, and communicate them well in a way that they trust you. So that skill diversification, I think specialization is also very important, always has been, but is more so now. I think those things help you stay relevant, help you stay in demand, help you demand higher fees potentially, that sort of thing. I know I'm kind of talking, or higher salary, whichever side of the employment box you're on, I guess. Let's see. I'm gonna.
Eric, well, one other thing, just on
Yes.
the area of adding value, I
Yeah.
think in my experience, a lot of what we do on the NetSuite side is reactive to business requests, business challenges, and I think there's an opportunity here for the development community to be more proactive, not only understanding the business processes, but then where does the business need to be aware of issues? Maybe I'm coming back to data here, intentionally or not. It's my comfort place, but understanding when there's issues within the data itself, or you know having robust kind of error language that actually speaks to the end user and tells them when things are going wrong versus something more generic that NetSuite might produce. Or even to the point where you're monitoring those error logs, deeply understand the fix for them. So you can fix issues before the end users even log a ticket, right? Like it's just that mindset of being proactive as you're building and developing solutions that I think is going to continue to prove valuable to any organization versus the folks that are reactive and just taking requests and still doing a great job, by the way, and solving
Mhm.
great problems. But if you can get ahead of those, I think that's job security right there.
Yeah, completely agree. Let's see. I'm going to poke around for some more questions here. Let's see. Are you seeing, this is from Anonymous, are you seeing NetSuite clients bring their development, and I might again extend to admins as well, in-house, or is there more growth on the third party side, on the consulting firm side, the partner side? What do you see that in your perspective?
I mean, it's hard not to just lean on the size and scale of the company, right, and the complexity of their business processes. As a company
Yeah.
scales, it grows. Even smaller companies that have very kind of complex business models, you generally want to have that core in-house, just having that knowledge that can then be supplemented by experts in very specific areas. So in my experience, companies small and large, there has been some element, some component of an in-house team to support the business. Not that
Yeah.
you couldn't outsource it, but I think there's value in that deep understanding of the business, what's changing, because things change so quickly, as I said earlier. But knowing that you can leverage outside resources where you need expertise, maybe in a niche area, or maybe there's just not enough hours in the day and you need to supplement what your team can produce today. So
Mhm.
that that's my experience so far, Eric. Is that consistent with you, or are you seeing something a little different?
Yeah, I don't, it's hard for me to say where I see the most growth. I feel I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, the only social media sort of platform I spend any time on. But I see simultaneously a lot of job openings, job postings, and a lot of open to work banners at the same time. I see um, consulting partners that are consolidating. I see a lot of consolidation. Uh, a lot, and that usually means a lot of layoffs as well, downsizing. Um, and uh, so it's hard to say. It's really inconsistent where I think the growth is. I see plenty of other consulting firms who are hiring left and right and growing. So the end user side, I'm not as in touch with that, but I mean, if think I think the last Sweet World I was at was 2018, and it was a big deal that they just hit 20,000 customers. So they have doubled, in the last 6 years. So that is a huge amount of growth, and that only means there will be more demand for customization services, whether they're bringing them in house or not. I think, yeah, I'm with you. Depends a lot on the size, the resources that the company has. Um, so that's kind of a non-answer. Say like, I don't know where the growth is. It's hard to say. But I do think as things like AI and as just like more people participating in this ecosystem means knowledge is more readily available. There will be more people sharing, there will be more jobs, more people learning, and that will sort of suffuse the market with more knowledge. As that knowledge gets more readily available, more accessible, as those skills get more accessible, you'll see more and more, especially like consulting firms, try to add NetSuite arms or crop up trying to do NetSuite work, but that increased competition makes the switching cost easier, lower. So again, it's harder. It'll be harder to stick around because there's just more competition. So you'll have to do something to rise above and stand out, to rise above the average.
I think so, and
So
I still
I don't
think
know where the
that
growth
those two
is.
worlds, that those two
Hard to
worlds are
say.
going to yeah, I agree, Eric, and I think those two worlds are going to exist all likelihood in perpetuity. So for me, I wouldn't even think about the growth aspect as much as a professional, what do I want from my career? Do I want experience across a breadth of industries and companies, and solutioning, or do I want to help build something at a company and help them grow? And so for me, it's almost vocational in a way as well, is how I would think about it. Like, what are you looking to get from your career? Like, and is it that kind of broader overview of NetSuite and what NetSuite can and cannot do, or that more focused kind of business driven solving challenges to help a business grow and scale?
Let's see. I'm digging through
Sure.
more questions here. There's a whole bunch of comments about AI, and uh, I'm pretty sure I've said this myself as well. From where'd it go? From J May. AI will not take your job, but a person using AI will. I think that's definitely sure. You know, someone in the same role probably will. Someone who can do more with less. Um, that's going to
Absolutely.
be the acute um, competition, I would say. And yes, I think everybody. I think AI gives great power, but with that power comes responsibility. I think we all know that these systems hallucinate. They are not always accurate. You can give them the same input and get different output. But those sorts of things will, like, there's no indication that companies are going to stop investing in these and stop building these and stop training them. There is tons of money and research and effort uh, going towards the development of these systems, and so they're going to get better. That comes with a whole bunch of downsides, um, but they're going to get better, and they're going to do so quickly with the amount of resources being thrown at them. Um, so I don't think it's unreasonable to put your guard up and start learning, start diversifying your skills and things like that. Sure, maybe it won't take your job next week, but someone using it really effectively might in about a month or in 6 months. You never know. The adoption rate and the acceleration is massive.
Eric, I want to just pick your brain on that. Kind of
Sure.
going one step further. I spoke about kind of the use case that I had some success with the advanced PDFs in the past.
Yeah.
But what about taking an existing suite script and using an AI model to learn more about it, just to understand the structure, and then even potentially make tweaks to it in the future, as opposed to starting the code base from scratch? Is that a use case that you're seeing, or that you could see in the future, not just on the technical side, but even for functional folks that have been, need to take that on now, with companies kind of looking to do
Yeah,
more with less, as you said?
I think we already see that sort of thing elsewhere in the software industry, in places that aren't as niche as NetSuite, as relatively small as NetSuite is. Even though we're talking about how much it's growing, it's still very small compared to the amount of teams writing code with React, right? And so React, if you want to write a React app, you can fire up GitHub Copilot and have it scaffold you the framework for a really complete React application, and then your developers sort of fill in the gaps, the details, the nuances of that specific application. But yeah, I think sort of scaffolding like that, like you're talking about, is something that these frameworks, these systems would be very good at. And that's not limited to code. I think certainly um, workflows can be represented as text, in SDF. And I think there's no reason an LLM, especially one built by Oracle, NetSuite, can't design workflows. At least sort of the scaffolding, the framework for a workflow. You feed it sort of your requirements and what a workflow looks like and what it can do. And I don't think there's any reason it can't generate that XML like it generates JavaScript. The the other, I think, major use case on the development side is like code completion. They're very good at sort of learning your style very quickly as a developer and sort of predicting what you're trying to write. Even in a very short time, the little bit of testing I've done with Copilot, like GitHub's Copilot and JetBrains Assistant. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. But they live in
I'm just going to nod and smile here, Eric.
Yeah, they live in my development environment, and as I'm typing code, they sort of learn what I'm writing and try to predict. They can learn the way that I specifically write code, and they can predict, and they can format the code around it the same way. And I've seen them get very good at that very quickly. So it expedites the process of writing code in a lot of ways. It doesn't always do that correctly, of course. So have to have oversight, and you still have to pay attention. You can't just ignore what it output and assume that it's right. But it does make that sort of those repetitive tasks a lot faster.
No, it makes sense. Eric, I want to kind of bring a few ideas together here and get your perspective. So coming back to the idea of needing to be proactive and adding value to your organization in 2025, and the fact that NetSuite has grown so quickly, it has a lot of customers on the platform for a long time. System performance continues to be talked about in the community. At least that's what I'm seeing. And I think an area where folks can be proactive, more technical or not, is jumping into the NetSuite application performance monitor tool that's available to you, seeing across the business what's taken so long, why is it taking so long, and then tying it back to the AI piece. Is there an opportunity here for folks to look at scripts that are taking 10, 15 seconds to execute? Maybe even copy paste that into a tool and say, hey, rewrite this so it's more efficient on the system. Like, is that a valid use case? Is that something that, as folks are thinking about being proactive, adding value while not taking up their entire day to day, is that something you would have them think about, or would you have other recommendations?
Yeah, I think that's a great use case for it. It's more a matter of like, I'm very interested to see where NetSuite takes their LLM, right? Their generative AI, and how that interacts with SuiteScript, because the ones like the larger, more public ones, like GitHub's Copilot generates, or ChatGPT generates pretty rough, I would say, SuiteScript. I did a YouTube video on this quite a while ago, but it didn't work. Like there's no way someone new to development could have got that script working. No chance. It looks like SuiteScript, sort of like visually, it looks like it, but it doesn't run like it. It doesn't work.
Okay.
So that's why I'm really curious to see what NetSuite does with theirs, because I expect that will be trained on much more SuiteScript specifics. I just saw this fly up in the chat from Aaron. ChatGPT hallucinates whole modules. Yes, it does. Like, just makes up modules that do not exist.
Yes.
And functions and all that stuff. But I'm curious to see what NetSuite does, because it will be trained on, I assume, on actual SuiteScript, and that sort of thing. Make this more efficient, make this use less governance, etc. The LLM will have that sort of knowledge and be able to presumably assess that and help you do that sort of thing very quickly. So I think the potential applications are endless for the creative folks out there of what they could do with this proactively. It's just a matter of how accurate can it be? How much does it hallucinate? How well can you supervise its output? Um, and you can't supervise that output without expanding your skill set and building that knowledge in the first place.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And then for me, like regardless of whether you go that route and then test and see if you have success or not, or if you're truly building the code from scratch or enhancing it, there's that next level of, at least what I've liked to do in the past, is like a design review process where you sit down with your end users before you even get to the coding part, right? Is this the solution that you're needing? Is this the problem you're trying to solve? Because I've found that as well,
Yeah.
that the developers have completed a solution, they're feeling great about it, they've tested it, it works, we deploy it to production, only to find that it missed the mark. Or maybe it would have been valuable 6 months ago, but because of delays, everyone's very busy, it's no longer as valuable. So I feel like
Yeah.
that kind of coming back to like the cross-functional collaboration, being able to sit down with the developers, really walk through the process before there's any code, whether it's in Gen AI or written from scratch. Like that's a key step in that kind of being proactive, um, and forward looking.
Right. The chat is like flying by, so I'm gonna switch
Yeah.
over to the Q&A here. Um, here's a very, so I'm gonna pull a question from here, from Anonymous, and this might be retreading the same ground a little bit, but what advice do you have for an entry-level NetSuite consultant? Someone just coming into the market.
Hmm. That's a great open-ended question. I, having gone through the NetSuite certification process myself, it's hard not to recommend that because you're going to get a good feel for the breadth of what's available in NetSuite. Knowledge is power. So sometimes it's, yeah, maybe you don't need to be a skilled SuiteScript developer. Maybe you don't need to be very skilled at workflows, but just having that understanding of what the system can and cannot do, and having just good intuition around what the right path is, because with a tool as robust as NetSuite, there's never one solution to solve a problem. There's often like 3 or 5 different ways you can go, but there's normally one that's going to be the most efficient or the right solution that a customer's looking for. So I think that, and there's lots of free training resources out there as well. Salto Leap, I would highly recommend if anyone hasn't checked that out. Um,
Yep.
that there's plenty of opportunities to learn quickly in the NetSuite ecosystem. So I would start there as a base, understanding the core modules and what's out there and its capabilities before deep diving into any like one specific area of
Mhm.
whether it's quote to cash, procure to pay, workflows, SuiteScript. I think building that foundation is key.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This is going to dovetail into another question from Anonymous. Which role will have a better future, the technical or the functional? And I think it's the techno-functional role has the best future. So yeah, that I think early on when you're just coming in, it's great to try and sort of touch as much of NetSuite as you can, as many um, modules, areas, roles, etc., as you can. But pretty quickly, especially if you want to get into the technical um, side of things, and even more so if you ever want to go out on your own, pretty quickly identifying a specialty, something you really enjoy, something you're really good at, whether it's one module or one sort of industry, one vertical, something like that, identifying sort of areas of specialization that you really enjoy, and then laser focusing on those. I think that's especially important if you ever want to go out on your own, but I think it's also important for climbing the ranks, if you will, especially on the consulting side. Um, because it's pretty hard to be a generalist and to like get get a senior to principal level knowledge of any specific part of NetSuite if you're trying to do all of NetSuite all the time. Um, so I think that specialization is important to for the long term, but in the short term, especially when you're brand new, just try it all. Try it all. See what sticks, what you like, what you're good at, and then laser focus on those.
Yeah, and I think it also depends what line of work you're in. Like if you're involved directly in brand new NetSuite implementations, well, maybe you're going to focus more on, yeah, deeply understanding your CSV imports and saved searches at the basics to help kind of stand up a new company in NetSuite. Whereas that might look very different if you're supporting like longer, well-established businesses that have been operating NetSuite for years who may be leaning more towards heavy customization to adapt to their business needs. So keep that in mind as well.
Mhm.
Just what your focus is going to be for the next 12 months, that should drive some of that. But I can't argue with Eric's point. Just get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves, and dive in.
Yeah. Let's see. Another anonymous question asking us to predict the future. What NetSuite modules will be in demand during 2025? We can't answer that specifically, but are there areas, Sonny, that you see NetSuite maybe investing more in, whether it's industries, sort of modules, like where is NetSuite's effort going right now from your perspective?
That's a tricky one. And for me, it's hard not to default to the quote to cash space because in any business, that's kind of their bread and butter. And if I was to have that crystal ball, my prediction, and maybe it's not too big of a leap, is that the move towards kind of usage models and the ability to charge your customers for incremental value that you're delivering like, as a business, not as a NetSuite consultant here, but as a business for a second.
Yeah.
I see more and more businesses thinking about that. And I think NetSuite's going to be thinking about that too. Like, how can we enhance suite billing, other areas of the application to accommodate those kind of ever-changing business needs and the flexibility that's needed for billing and revenue recognition purposes. Now, I'm
Mhm.
not as in the details as to what's been solved there and what's kind of low-hanging fruit, but that's always going to be my default here is going to be the quote to cash space, because you can argue other areas like procure to pay, record to report, not that they're solved, but that the business processes are generally simpler. And so it's more easy to adapt in those process areas. I see companies where they have challenges today and they're looking for solutions is on that quote to cash side. What are you seeing on your side, Eric, as companies are looking for heavy customization and solutions? Is it across the board? Is it one specific area?
Yeah, I live in a pretty small Sweet Script bubble, so I'm not as in tune with the larger market trends. But on the scripting side, I feel like since the dawn of the internet, we've gone through this, especially in like the ERP type space. We go through these cycles where at first it's like we want to consolidate everything and do everything in one system, and then the market rebels against that and says no, we want specialized systems, and then we want to tie them together, and then we rebel against that because it's hard to maintain all those integrations, and we get back to trying to consolidate everything again into one system. I feel like we're sort of in the middle right now of that cycle. Like we're at an inflection point maybe where it's uh or not an inflection point. Not, I don't remember my my math vocabulary, but where there's this tension between trying to decide should we put everything in NetSuite or should we have these specialized systems. So I do see a
Yeah.
lot of integration work for sure as companies try to tie multiple systems together. But I don't know if that will continue. I'm not sure. Um, and then because I can't be sure, but I feel like I also see a lot more the I think along the lines of what you were saying, sort of the areas with the simpler or the more consistent processes. I don't see as much from them. I see a lot more on the complicated spaces, manufacturing, inventory management. That sort of stuff gets really nuanced, really complicated, really fast. Um, and so I see a lot more work, a lot more questions, especially in the spaces that I monitor along those lines.
Yeah.
So those really complex areas are because that complexity comes from the fact that so many companies want to do it differently. They have their own way, they have their own special nuances, and you can't really do your own special accounting. That's not how accounting works. But you can do inventory management however you like. You can organize your warehouses however you like. But so that sort of thing, those areas where there is nuance and room for customization, that's where most of the development efforts I see go.
Yeah, makes sense.
All right, let's see. Um, Scanning the questions. Let's see. This one's from Naoya. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. What about trends in remote working? I spoke to a recruiter and they say it's less now. It's more competitive accordingly and pays less. Do you expect this trend in remote working to continue? So, do you see remote working being paying less and being less available?
That's a good question. And I mean, I work at Viva Systems today, a company that is proudly a work anywhere company. And so in the microcosm of the bubble that I live in, I'm gonna say no. However, more generally, I think that's a fair statement that, you only have to open up LinkedIn or any kind of news outlet to see companies, you know, yeah, you see the acronym RTO everywhere,
Yep, everywhere.
recently. And so, and whether that's a hybrid thing, um, whether that's permanent, it's happening. Um, I think even as recently as this week and last week, if you look at kind of the federal level, that there are changes being made very quickly where companies are looking to bring people back to the office, and yet there are companies out there bucking that trend and having a lot of success. So I I would say in general, yes, that's the trend that we're seeing now, but I can also see a world where the trend reverses again, right? That there's a reason that many of these companies were very successful a few years ago, and they proved that they were able to operate functionally and profitably with their employees working remote. So it's the trend right now. I could absolutely see the trend bucking in the future. And I think there are still companies out there that truly value the ability to have their employees working anywhere and the employees doing their best work, whether that's from home, whether that's in an office. Some employees may choose to work in an office, even if they don't have to, because that's where they do their best work. And I think companies that are thinking like that are going to have the most success. And let's face it, as well, as you think about just the availability of talent in any given area, you're going to have more success if you're looking at a larger area, just statistically, right? If you're looking for a very niche skill set as well, and we kind of live in that NetSuite world, opening that up to a broader pool of candidates is only going to allow you to find stronger candidates to fill that role. And if you limit yourself to a specific city or a specific office, statistically, you're not going to find the best talent. So
Yeah.
that would be my 2 cents there, Eric. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm almost 100% in agreement with you. I've worked remote since for 10 years now. So I am pro remote for all the same reasons that you are. I think right now, yeah, RTO is everywhere because we're seeing the rubber band snap back the other way from the pandemic era remote, all remote all the time. Eventually, in the long term, things will sort of normalize and stabilize, and there will just be remote companies, there will be not remote companies, there will be hybrid companies, and that will just be part of your job search. Right now it's a hot topic and there's all this debate about it. Eventually people are going to stop caring about debating it, and they're just going to use that as criteria in their job search. um, and it won't be such a hot topic or a big issue. It'll just be a state of the workforce. um, so I, I don't see like I don't think remote work will ever disappear. I think there will always be remote companies. There will always be hybrid roles, um, and there will always be office only roles. There are some jobs you can't do remotely. You can't. A plumber can't fix my toilet remotely. So
Not yet.
I think you'll always see
One
a
one day,
balance.
Eric.
Yeah. Yeah. Not yet. Yeah. Maybe an AI can do that for me someday.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there will always be a sort of balance. Things will sort of trend towards stabilization with what does the job market demand and what can the employers provide. Uh, I don't know where that stabilization lands. Right? Is it 80% office jobs? Probably not, but um, somewhere in the middle, right? Somewhere in the middle, most likely. That's usually where things settle.
And just to the salary piece as well, right? I mean, generally speaking, it's going to be based upon your location, right? Not where the company is headquartered. If you're in New York, maybe you would expect a different salary to somewhere in the Midwest. I don't think those overarching kind of criteria fizzle out when you're talking about remote versus in person. There's still factors that companies use today to figure out salary and compensation. I don't see that changing.
Right. I'm watching the clock here. Just a few minutes left. Um,
Do we have time for one more question, Eric?
yeah, I'm going to pull one more question here. I didn't get even close to getting to them all. There's a ton here, but another one from Anonymous. Hopefully, this isn't the same anonymous person that I've been grabbing from. But as more is being asked of NetSuite professionals, doing more with less, how do you recommend negotiating pay or fee increases? And are there any resources you'd recommend to make sure we are being paid appropriately for newer, more hybrid roles, admin combined with dev, etc.? So do we have advice for salary, increasing your salary or your fees, perhaps, um, in this do more with less market?
I know that some companies are doing salary surveys, and I'm willing to bet that this techno-functional role is, as that evolves, that's going to be included in there. So you're going to have benchmarking statistics available to you, and maybe even today. I'm not sure that I could point you to any one specific resource, Eric. I don't know if you have any in mind, but it's out there and it's available. Maybe less so on the consulting side. I'm not as familiar, but there are definitely free resources out there for you to benchmark from a salary perspective. Um, so I would check that out.
Yeah. Real quick, we are going to do a poll here in a few minutes. So you there out in the audience, please stick around, check out the poll. In terms of salary resources, yeah, I know Anderson Frank puts one out every year of location, like by location, by role. They put out a whole bunch of different statistics around pay in the NetSuite space. Anderson Frank, I have no affiliation to them. I don't know that Salto does either. Just they're a recruiting firm that focuses on NetSuite, and they publish a salary report every year. On Salto Leap, which we talked about earlier, there is a job board there as well where you can look and see job postings and salary. And Salto has just let me know in a direct message here that they will also be publishing a salary report based on that
Oh,
in the next 2 weeks. So just look out for that as well. Any, while we get the poll posted and put up here, Sonny, any closing words or advice for the audience about what things look like in 2025?
I think for me, the key takeaway would be having folks think about how they can be proactive, and whether that's jumping into generative AI and seeing what can and cannot be done there, whether that's looking at system performance, whether that's sitting down with the business to really understand what they're trying to solve, whether that's sitting down, if you're a functional person, sitting down with your technical folks and really deeply understanding those solutions. I think if you keep that in the back of your mind, you're looking at growth in 2025, job security, all of that good stuff. That's a great place to start.
I don't know that mine is too different, but that skill diversification, I think, is going to be key to the future. It already has been super valuable, but it's going to be even more in demand in the future as companies continue their infinite quest to do more with less. And I think that will bring us to a close. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Sonny, thank you so much for your time. And thank you, Salto, for hosting and sponsoring this conversation.
Thanks very much, Eric. Great conversation today.
Thank you. See y'all next time.
Bye for now.